The Sheriff Arbon has graciously accepted our invitation to be today.
Stacy, how are you? I'm half left and half right.
This is an important meeting. In our history, we're under some really intense times right now as a people. And we come with a spirit of gratitude for Sheriff Arbon here today showing up for us. And we come here today with hearts that are full of concern, but are also full of knowing who God is and that our God is great. So thank you for coming, and thank you so much for Kathy for hosting this event in her Liberty Hall building. It's a beautiful building. Yeah. So with that, I have a couple of announcements to make. I want the sheriff to be aware that we here in this building are people here who are claiming, using, and defending our rights.
Amen.
We're remembering our rights. We here in this building are people who love God. Amen. And we worship God, the great God, the Almighty God, the highest God. We here would love to educate our sheriff today on a couple of key points on the hierarchy of law. Sheriff, we just want to reiterate what our founding fathers knew. We know that God created man. Man created government. Therefore, government is subject to the will of the people. And government operates by the consent of the governed. That's really important. I think a lot of people have forgotten that. That the government is subject to the will of the people. But the problem is the people have forgotten their rights. The people have forgotten God. Again, we in this room know who we are. We know who God is. We know that we create government, and government is subject to the will of the people. So, now that I've wanted to make that point clearly to the sheriff, as our public servant, it is our hope that our sheriff is responsive to the will of the people. And we're so grateful that the sheriff has chosen to come out so that we can get to know him today, so that we can just get to honor who he is. Did you know that the sheriff holds the second highest office in the land? Sheriff, did you know that you hold the second highest office in the land?
They told that.
Right? The sheriff office is secondary only to the President of the United States. Now, there's a sheriff that I'll mention at the end of the meeting who's coming to Utah at the end of June. Well, I'll just mention his name now. His name is Sheriff Mack, and he is coming to teach sheriffs and their deputies for free in Utah who would like to learn, again, relearn the Constitution and recommit to upholding people's rights, to upholding their oath of office. So we're going to let, with a spirit of thanks today for the sheriff to come in today, we would ask that the sheriff please just come ahead and go ahead and introduce himself today. Take as long as you want to just introduce yourself and what you feel is important. And then what we're going to do is we have prepared a few questions for the sheriff. These questions are in the Constitutional Peace Officers Association survey for all sheriffs across America. So with that, please welcome out Sheriff Arbon to take the mic.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate this opportunity to come out. When you come to events like this, you always think about positivity, positive comments, and the support that you're going to have. You can't hear. Is that better? I take the mic with me. All right, thank you. And right now we live in such a divisive world right now, and then you always worry about the ambush, you worry about this and that. People have such strange agendas. Let me first introduce myself so you guys can get a little more clear who I am, and hopefully it'll give you a good belief or foundation. Maybe one or two know who I am, but born and raised in Yuba County. I spent most of my life in Pleasant View, and then went on an LDS mission to San Diego. And then when I returned home, I went to the police academy, started with the sheriff's office as a bailiff, and after a few months as a bailiff, I knew that I had to get my degree. I moved to Missouri, not Missouri. Here it's Missouri, there it's Missouri. I lived there for 4 years, graduated with a criminal justice degree, and while I was there, you learn that Missouri's not Utah. You learn that a lot of people are different than you. When you were growing up, people would say, you live a sheltered life, you need to get out and experience things. I'm sure that some of you probably would encounter that. Thank God that I live a shelter. Because I don't want that other stuff. And so, San Diego was interesting. It was a true melting pot of individuals. There's the military has heavy presence down there. Miramar, Pendleton, 32nd Street, Naval Base. So there's a lot of negativity put on California. I wouldn't hesitate to live in San Diego just because it's pretty conservative considering California. Great people down there. So I came back home and worked for Clearfield City for about 14 years as a patrolman and other responsibilities. And then I had the opportunity to apply for a chief position in Perry City. And if anybody knows law enforcement or general business, working in an agency that's somewhat a certain size to go to a really small department, for us, typical A type of personalities, that's small, right? You're not the big guy anymore. But I felt that my journey to get there was right, and I put in for it, and I applied. And so I got to put in the things that I felt was the right way to lead law enforcement. One thing that drives me nuts, I learned this up in Perry, is when an officer gets a question, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm in law enforcement. I enforce the law. As true as that is, I struggle with the way of the delivery that sounds. So we changed our motto, if you will, out there, as we're guardians. We protect everyone. We protect the victim. We protect the suspect. We protect everybody's rights. I mean, even when you're talking about something simple as speeding, nobody likes a ticket. And for the record, being in law enforcement, I have gotten tickets. I expect to be treated the same as everybody else. But even a simple example of a speeding ticket, by stopping somebody, you are not only holding them accountable, but you're protecting them as well. You're protecting them from not causing an accident. You're protecting them from not injuring somebody else. So I look at our role as guardians. We've changed that model a little bit. The sheriff's office, which is, as you know, holds the Perry City is a town of 5,000 people, and it's there's a lot of farmers, but there's also a lot of growth up there. So you get a mix of individuals coming in that want modernization. Then you have the older group, families, that don't want anything to change. And so there's some issues there. You know, for me, it doesn't bother me that someone rides a motorcycle or four-wheeler on the street, especially in a street that's not very impacted with heavy traffic. Then you got the modern people want curb gutter sidewalk. They want swimming pools, city swimming pools and golf courses. And when I see that stuff, I just think tax. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so anyway, up there at Perry, it's a little bit of a challenge. And then about 2 years into that gig, I got a couple phone calls from 2 city mayors and a county commissioner. They said, "We need to run to the sheriff's office." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Because there's problems there." And I said, "There's problems in every place." If we were perfect, we all wouldn't be here, right? But we make mistakes. We're human. We see it all the time. And in a little bit, I'll share with you a couple things that I've gone through while being sheriff that's drawn a lot of attention, a lot of criticism. I hope that you can tell where I stand in the character that I have and the character we have in the sheriff's office. So anyway, Terry Thompson, who was great to me. I didn't know him because I was so removed from the sheriff's office for 20-something years. And when I decided to get in the race, it's a struggle. I've never cared for politicians. I tell myself today that I'm not one. But wonderful people like individuals I work with, the commissioners, even Linda will tell me if you are a politician, and I don't want Linda calling me a politician.
I did not.
And it was only meant in technical terms. And Linda and I see a lot of the same things, and it's hard to be who you are while being elected. I have a lot of respect for elected officials. It's tough. It's tough to go through it. I can see when you get pulled so many ways and you don't like the stress, you don't like, the groups coming after you, pulling in every direction. I'm not making an excuse for any wrong decision by any means, but I know it's tough. And I have a respect for politicians. Even some of the ones that don't make decisions that we would make. It's just hard. And I've tried everything I can to not be that politician. And that's why I love law enforcement, is because it allows me to remove myself from the politics of things. We are guardians. We're not politicians. And sometimes people make us be politicians. We try to. So coming into the sheriff's office, I had a couple of principles that or standards that I set. One of them is I would never ask anybody for $1 for my campaign. I never did. I never set up a fundraiser for myself to get money. I also made a record of I think there's 8 things I promised on my campaign. And when I appointed my staff, my executive staff, I showed them I want to say 6, 7, or 8 things that I promised to the voters. And 2 years into it, we brought those up, and I said, "Where are we on my commitment to the people?" We went through every single one, and we have met every promise plus some. And this goes back to me trying to distance myself from some politicians, is they make a lot of commitments, and I think they want those commitments. And sometimes they can't do it. But I made sure the promises that I kept, I could meet it. So when it comes to my next run as sheriff, people can ask me, "What have you done?" And I'll say, "This is what I said, this is what we did." That's the way it should be with every politician, right? So coming into the sheriff's office, obviously being an outsider is very challenging, right? I'm not from the sheriff's office, and there's the way it's always been, why change things? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. it's not broke, why can't we make it better, right? I made a commitment to stand up for what's right. You guys, a lot of you know about the situation with the University of Utah and the unfortunate death of the female athlete there. When that thing came on, I had a friend that works in Pleasant View call me up and say, hey, there's a girl down there that's being scapegoat. She's a rock star. You need to hire her because she had resigned because of the scrutiny she'd done her. That's a tough decision. It is. But I would do it for you. And what I'm about to tell you, I would do it for you, and I would do it for any member of your family, for anybody that applies to my office. So anyway, she was the detective assigned to the case. So those that are familiar with law enforcement, and there's a 911 call, it's sorted through the dispatch center, and it's sent out to patrol. Patrol goes out, responds, investigates, and then it determines if the situation is resolved and it's pretty much done, or if it needs to go on to detective. So the case needed to go forward. So she was the assigned detective. She's not a patrol officer. She didn't wear a uniform like I wear. And so she was given that. And the sad thing about that incident was a week or so after she was handling it, the lady died, unfortunately. And there was a lot of blame put on this deputy that works for me now. And so at the time, I said to myself, so I have one of my own personal models. In any decision made, what is public expectation? What does the public expect me to do? And the number one answer is to do what's right. So you have someone who wants to apply for us, and we want to do what's right and treat this person the same, regardless of what can happen. So I sent our internal affairs lieutenant and a sergeant down to look at the person's file. She was a scapegoat. And it saddens me that people in our own profession attack our own and use them. We have plenty of documentation that she met with the lady, you, and provided her a cell phone number if she needed help. Any questions, in case she was in control. And when the U did their own investigation, they assigned the sergeant over detectives who was also in charge of the case too. So do you think he blow himself up? Sad and unfortunate. So we hired her, and boy, did I get hammered hard. I stood up for her because so few would. Because she did no wrong. And she's a complete rock star in our office. And these are the kind of people that public expectation has me wanting to hire to serve you. And it's been a tough ride at times. Law enforcement is 2020 was absolute hell for us. And I mean that in all, not just protests and riots, but also inside our jail. We had so many lawsuits making so many accusations. Every single lawsuit was defeated because we did what was right. We could prove everything. I learned, as you guys know, there's 29 sheriffs in our state, and strategies of some of these groups were to randomly request us to death to bog us down. They would want to ask how many bullets we bought, who shot which bullets, what time did they shoot these bullets. And so there's a coordinated effort to tear government down. We know who helps us ensure our freedom, the military. We also know who protects us from tyranny. It's law enforcement. One of the other things that I did, do you know who went down to Salt Lake to help Salt Lake? Weber County did. I'm going to share you a personal story about Salt Lake. Apologize if I get a little emotional, but you'll see why. About 4:30 on May 30th, we got a call from one of my sergeants saying that Salt Lake's on fire, they're flipping cars and burning, and they need help. But there was no call for help. so obviously we don't respond unless we get called. So I took the initiative and I contacted dispatch down there. They put me through a command center on site where all these protests were going down. And I talked to a lieutenant down there and I said, hey, Sheriff Arbon, Weaver County. And I said, are you guys okay with what you need? He goes, send us everything you got. So I have almost 400 employees. Most of them are sworn, about 50 or so, maybe a little more than that, they're support staff. So we called our supervisors and asked them, if we need to go solid, grab your gear, we're going down. And we posted some of this on Facebook. By 6:30 at the office, we had 24 of our staff suited up. And we went down, we took our MRAP, those big heavy metal devices or vehicles that are designed to only hurt citizens that they claim, which we know they're not. They're designed to protect our officers that don't want to get killed. So we sent 24 down there. At 6:30, we had 24. 2 hours later, ready to go to the office. We went down there. On our way down there, we were all in caravan lights and siren. And just before we got to the exit, we called into their dispatch and said, all right, we're 10 minutes out, where do you want us? Of all places, they sent us to City Creek. Why? Being looted. So these are the stories that I'm sharing with you, you don't hear. And I do believe that the media has an idea of the way they should put information out. It's unfortunate. So we get down there, and most of the looting was done. Destruction, lots of damage to City Creek. So we reassembled it, big lots, as one of the parking lots, and waited for our assignment. So we were there for about 5-6 hours, and then the next group was coming in. We had 22 more come down from Weaver County. Of the 24 that first went, guess how many of the 24 went home and because they had to go to bed? Just 2. Close enough. None of us out there, but it's 2. So we had over 40 there. What I didn't mention to you is when we assembled the sheriff's office the night of May 30th, I stood up in front of the group. You've probably seen in the paper, there's a picture of the camera behind me and showed all of our deputies there assembled, getting ready. And I said, I made it very clear, I said, this is a constitutional issue. We are being called to help. One, we have to remember, regardless of what side you're on, this is a First Amendment issue. Even though we don't agree with individuals and what they say, that they have that right. We need to protect their right to free speech. Number 2, protection of property. Defend property. And that was the orders that were given. So of the 4 days that we were down there, the sheriff's office on the one night sent 61 down there to help them. And the coolest thing about that event, someone on Facebook said, go help Salt Lake. We got you covered up here. That's Weaver County. That's how it is up here. That's why I love it. We're still some of the old West up here mentality, right? And that's what you need to survive, because there's some strong groups out there with some influence that are trying to change the way things are, and it's wrong. Because they don't like it or it's popular or something like that. We can't allow that to happen. Altogether, I should have brought it, but we made an award that we gave to each agency that serves us in Weaver County. Like, for example, Ogden, North Ogden, South Ogden, some other sent officers down there. UTA, adult probation patrol troopers, they sent down there. Altogether, some went multiple times. 227 officers that serve in the Weaver County area went down to Salt Lake.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. There was only one agency that was down there that had how dedicated our guys are and girls to protecting rights. And so, finally, I just wanted to say that there's a lot of our deputies that absolutely love the Constitution. They love the rights. They see the value. They talk about it frequently. We have classes and training that talk about the Constitution, and which I wish others did. I got to share one more thing. Sorry. When we went down to the riots, we said, how does Weaver County get ahead of the curve if it comes that bad? So as you guys know, sometimes the best training you can have is learn from other people who have it. So there's one agency in the United States that has the longest history of protests that they can document clear back to the pioneer times. Anybody want to guess? It's one that's always in the news. The P. Portland. They had documented protests from the pioneer time. So in September, the granddaddy, if you will, as they explained to me, the protest was about to happen September 26th. So we've been talking with the conference calling, asking what's going on, how are they attacking them, how are they dealing with it. And so myself and 3 other staff went to Portland and got to observe how they work. We call it the JIC Center, Joint Information Center. And we learned the tactics of these groups. And it's very interesting that it is about tyranny. Let's make no mistake. We learned that of the protesters, Portland PD told me that the protesters, when it started, about this time last year, the protests were somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000. They said early on, they didn't need police out there because they were respectful. They marched, they protested, they had their signs, they chanted, they said what they wanted to say. But what happened is, I call them lone wolves, or you can call them special interest groups and people started to get involved. The leaders of Black Lives Matter, the leaders of, there's a few other groups, I'm sorry, they slipped my mind, but not yet, you're getting there. But these other groups learned that they were being used as tools for tyranny. So even the leaders, as much as I struggle to understand, I mean, I've gone through all the Black Lives Matter, I know their agenda. But there are people within Black Lives Matter that see it as just that. But there's others like us that see the leadership and their true agenda. So there are those few that really believe that there's an issue, and that's what they marched for. But they started seeing these other, the Antifa, coming in and using them as a shield to destroy the property, to destroy and maim and throw and hurt law enforcement. And Antifa doesn't care if you're left or right. They just hate government. They want to tear it all down and rule however they want to do it. So we got up there and we learned some really interesting things. That if you were to take a percentage, after the protests actually thinned out to around 300 to 500 throughout the summer, and these were the disruptors, if you will. So of the 500 eventual average for the protesters in Portland, 50% were nicknamed looky-loos. Hey, let's go have a beer and just be in the middle of all this action. They really didn't, they just wanted to see it, be a part of it. You know, a lot of the younger college age and just people that just don't have much to do, I guess, until 2 a.m. And then you had 30-35% that were true protesters that really wanted to honor the First Amendment, honored all that, just wanted to be heard. Then you had 15% that were just criminals, opportunists. So that was really helpful for us to see. And so one thing we also noticed is that up in Portland, they have it's like a council, it's not a city council, I think they call them commissioners, but it is for the city. reports and put them to our city council, very much anti-police. One, for example, I can't remember the name, but one of the commissioners, if you will, purposely had their road department not clean up after the incidents. Because they wanted the police to have more struggles and wanted people to see the destruction. They want to see it. And it was the same for other departments. It's really unfortunate. And I can tell you this. The Weber County Commissioners support the Sheriff's Office and they support law enforcement. And this is why I want to make sure I'm really careful and not get too political. You know, but as far as law enforcement goes, they really support us. And that's what we have that Portland does not have, is leadership that supports law enforcement. And I thank them for that. So what we learned also from coming back from Portland was we're getting ready to head into our 2021 legislative session. There was 90 bills that we called against law enforcement. And the sheriffs and the chief of police organizations, we fought hard. And as much as anybody who knows sports, there's always an offense and there should be a defense. A lot of times the sheriffs don't get too involved unless it's really extreme or very, very low, which it all is anyway. But I'll tell you what your sheriff did, and the sheriffs up here in the north, we went and made our own offensive game. We created bills. You guys saw the riot bills that came through. I know who started that bill. We contacted good legislators like Lee Perry got it started for us, and that went to go Lee Perry's spot. We got a lot of the local